Thanks for Odyssey. Bit Chute, John's channel can be valued member, or just support channel coffee, CashApp, and the other various links. Join the Telegram. That is an awesome way to keep in touch, or the various other links to get a hold of me. So I've been actually painting the house. I've been a little bit tied up for the past few days. So I saw this article. I'm like, oh my gosh, the level of developmental disabled. The what do they call it when they're just like tying themselves into knots to. It's like horseshoe theory, but they just keep going. They just keep tying themselves in these bizarro Gordian loops to try to justify their behavior. And then you come down and you look at it and you're like, oh, you people are just insane. Like, it comes down to it. You'll do whatever a group tells you to do. You don't have a core dogma. Without a core dogma, you're going to, anytime the slings of an arrows come your way, you're going to just acquiesce to the mob to try to placate them. So this guy is a complete weirdo. Which is weird because he's in a pretty sound financial position where he doesn't have to engage this way if he doesn't want to. He can just step back and get off social media and go to his beach house and just watch the waves and work on his next book. But these people, social media is it's like cigarettes to them. It's just that constant dopamine and that affirmation from a crowd of people who you don't know. You probably wouldn't even like if you met half of them. You don't need their approval. Just, you're a writer. Just write books and put it out in the universe, and it'll probably do pretty well. So he gets into some weird areas where he's talking about stories changing, and he says stories need to change because culture changes in like 5 to 10 years. No, that's not culture organically changing. If that's happening, which it is, you're in the midst of a cultural revolution. And to be fair, there's a Bolshevik revolution going on right now. But if you're on Twitter in the midst of it, it's more extensive than it actually is. But the entertainment company like Disney and the big tech are very firmly on the side of these cultural Bolsheviks on Twitter, while oddly enough the general populace is not as on side. So if something is changing, if a story is suddenly not politically correct in 5 or 10 years, you're in the midst of a cultural revolution, and that's obviously the much, much bigger issue. But these people are not gonna talk about anything real. It's just like these people are absolutely gutless. If you remember when Stephen King bowed down to the mob, like he made a statement, he said judged art on the merits, and then he got a little pushback from a bunch of sociopaths on Twitter. And this dude is probably worth hundreds of millions of dollars, who has a huge body of work behind him, suddenly goes, oh, I didn't mean the thing I said 2 days ago, the thing I clearly articulated, me being a writer for 50 years, clearly, I didn't mean the thing that I actually said. That statement of fact, that statement I just made 2 days ago, yeah, I didn't mean that. Oh, it's kind of weird that, you're a writer and you made that statement. Quite clearly, you've been writing for, you don't have dementia yet. You're probably 70, 80, but he's been writing for 50 years. He said you judge art on the merits, and you're just going to walk that back now because you got a little pressure from some Twitter sociopaths who probably have never read your books. And who themselves have no internal core. It is a line in one of his books. He goes, "These people have forgotten the face of their fathers," which is love or hate Stephen King. He did have some good concepts in his books, and God, there was a lot of cringe in there also. But that concept of you've forgotten the face of your father and your ancestors. So anyway, classic stories. He's talking about the changing stories, and people in the comments are giving examples of Herman Melville and Mark Twain and stuff. Mark Twain is awfully problematic. No, he's not. You're just a pussy. Have you considered that you're just a pussy? Look in the mirror. You see a great. I'm going with that. Classic stories are classic because they're based on nationalism, patriarchal mythos, and story structure. Modern stories fail because they're propaganda. That kind of sums it up. They're simply propaganda. They will bend to the whim of the moment without any original thought or any core dogma. If you don't have that dogma, as soon as there's a mob that disagrees with you, you'll go along with the mob because they're terrified. There's a herd of cattle, right? They're terrified of being on the perimeter of the herd. They want to be in the center of that herd, which these people are insulated by wealth. This guy and Stephen King and a bunch of other people. It's like the money matters to them for sure, but the acceptance and the dopamine from their in crowd matters more. Where once you back down from a position that it's an honestly held position. The Stephen King thing said he said judge art on merits. Period. Once you back down from that, you lost respect from everybody. He said that in like, I'm on the right in some regards, and I hear that and I go, oh, okay, he's a bleeding heart liberal. I disagree with him on a lot of things, but I respect that one statement. He's got some backbone. And then 2 days later, he backs down on it. It's like, well, now nobody respects you. Nobody. The right doesn't respect you because you back down to something that you believe this. You truly believe that. You judge art on the merits. I believe it too. And then suddenly you let a crowd of cultural Bolsheviks bend you over, who you've got no reason to bend over to them, and you did it anyway. It's like the left doesn't respect you. They know that you're just a dog on a leash. Nobody respects you. And it makes it worse that you're not a starving artist you're not even the guy like the Shang-Chi guy who was talking about that rapper girl who I think is actually amazingly talented, talking about her on stage dancing around like a crazy person. He's not a starving artist either, but he's an up and coming actor, and he knew he had to back down right quick because he's not a huge actor. He's the guy who did the Shang-Chi thing. I almost said Kylie Minogue, but it's not. I forget the girl's name. She did Nicki Minaj, who I think is actually tremendously talented. So that guy, the Shang-Chi guy, actually had a reason to back down. But these people who are hugely successful, it's like, just say what you believe and stick to it. Oh, I couldn't possibly do that. The pressure of a bunch of this mass of nameless strangers. Yeah, they're nameless strangers who, if you met them in person, they would probably agree with you in person, but they have this public persona and it's all BS. So these people are very, very much drinking the Kool-Aid. All these kind of istaphobic terms that this guy is throwing around, they're not real. These are cultural Bolshevik control terms that they use to manipulate you. And there's a long history of Trotsky and a.k.a. Bernstein creating these terms. I don't know if they created the terms. The general concepts probably been around for a little while, but they've been... if you control language, if you control media, you control the narrative, and if you can shape language and redefine terms, then you can get people to do whatever you want, which is what they're trying to do by redefining words. The thing is, we can redefine words also. It's like, oh, well, we have this definition of this word, and you guys have this definition of this word. So when we speak this language, you're going to have to interpret it. This is our meaning, and you guys will have a different meaning. It's it's not headed to a good place to have a Tower of Babel, but it is what it is. There's not a lot you can do about that other than homeschool your kids. Anyway, so Rick is drinking this cultural Bolshevik Kool-Aid. None of this stuff is real. It's all manipulation from the Bolsheviks who were trying to destroy the West, and they're doing it very successfully. No, the cultural standards don't change in 5 years. That means you're in the middle of a cultural revolution. Nothing this unstable is real. The woke crowd is just a sailboat without a rudder. They will simply do whatever their Bolshevik masters tell them to do. Stop buying into all this Marxist propaganda. It's okay to be a nationalist. It's okay to love your tribe first and not want to see, and want to see that your tribe is reflected in the stories. And want to see people who look like you. Everyone wants that. It's only people who are listening to this who don't seem to want to advocate for their side and advance their interests. You don't want to see race swap stories, because you want to see the story in its original format, which is why you fell in love with this story. You want to see your tribe, not some other tribe. That is natural and good. And we need to say it more out loud, because you have these other people, these Marxists who are running around saying they want to see their tribe. It's like, okay, great, we want to see our tribe too. Whee! That's istaphobic. No, it's not. It's the same thing for us as it would be for you. Why would it be any different? We're all on the same page here. All this race-swapping globalist nonsense is propaganda. Reject all of it as the cancer it is. These people hate you. Why support them in any way whatsoever? And I think this is also the guy who said he was going to sell his Tesla if Trump came back to Twitter. It's like, way to broadcast that virtue signal. And that's kind of another thing. It's like Trump's got Truth Social, and then there's Getter and Gab out there. And Gab is a free political speech website, and Twitter is very much not. And then there's Getter and Frank Lindell's got his own thing, Truth Social, all this kind of nonsense stuff that's like, they're not free speech. You have Twitter and you have Gab, and everything else is something else. Trump had the opportunity to go to Gab, and he didn't pick it because ultimately Trump is not our guy. I'm assuming you're on the right. He's not a pro free speech guy. He's not any kind of change that would matter. So he wants his own little website, Truth Social, and he said he's not coming back to Twitter, which is honestly, if Elon Musk allowed him back on Twitter, you should probably just abandon Truth Social and get on Twitter, because it's Twitter or Gab, which is kind of polar opposites. But anyway, so this is the guy who said he wanted to sell his Tesla. It's like, okay, great. What are you gonna go buy? So I sold my Tesla and I bought a $200,000 AMG that gets 13 miles to the gallon because it has a 800 horsepower twin turbo V12. Like, oh, okay, that's great. It's not really quite the same virtue signal, but whatever. He's not going to go buy a Toyota Prius, which I know is not popular, but I would like to have a car that gets 600 miles to the gallon. That kind of trips me out. Anyway, he's also triggered in this article by beads and feathers, and I've heard this kind of thing before from different authors. Do the woke crowd think that Europeans sprang into existence in the modern era? They also went through the Stone Age where they wore beads, feathers, and deer skins because all that stuff was around. Every group on Earth probably did the same thing. And yes, Europeans also braided their hair and put feathers in their hair and had beaded necklaces, as you can look from anthropological studies in Europe. And who did you think these people... Europeans are not space aliens who came from heaven 500 years ago and just magically formed villages and it was all like preformed. We are awesome. Don't get me wrong. We are very awesome, but I don't think we're that awesome to like come from space alien heaven awesome. Eventually, we have to start rejecting this woke anti-white evil propaganda. If a story is not politically correct 10 years post-creation, I should have said Genesis, then the cultural Bolsheviks are the problem, which they are. We are effing awesome. These globalists are the problem. None of this changes until we destroy their propaganda. We must turn their nonsense around on them and dismantle and destroy their systemic systems of oppression and hatred. If I feel it, it must be true. That's the level of argument. Listen, once they put appeals to emotion on the table, then you can counter an emotional argument with an emotional argument. If they feel something to be true, all you have to say is, well, I feel differently, and you're wrong. That's what happens when the adults leave the building and you're not arguing, issue, rule, analysis, conclusion, or using the scientific method. When everything's an appeal to emotion, it's just children. It's just children who are saying, I'm not touching you. I'm not touching you. Obviously, this doesn't end well. I mean, I think you know that by now if you're listening to my Odyssey and Bit Chute videos. We are the oppressed ones. They are oppressing us with globalist propaganda. It's time to reject all this crap. They are crazy people who hate us, probably because we're awesome. And I mean, what do you call it when you hate somebody based on their national origin? Yeah. Well, you mean the left wing was racist the whole time? The POCs are racist? Yeah. Welcome to Earth. Yeah, welcome to Earth. Where you been? So the writer didn't write a POC character originally, probably because it wouldn't freaking sell to the masses, which he wanted to sell and make hundreds of millions of dollars. So he wrote a European character, because when he wrote the book, he's selling to the biggest audience in America. Put a bunch of little, red-haired, blonde-haired kids on the cover of his books, and you're going to sell to the biggest audience. You put a POC character, you're selling, which is fine. I mean, you can sell it to that audience if you want to market to that audience, but it's a smaller audience. He wanted to sell the books. So then he race swapped her when the movie came around, because Disney said, we're going to pay you $20 million for the rights to this movie, but we want to race swap all the characters. It's like, oh, okay, fine, $20 million? Yeah, that's fine. No problem. $20 million. Yeah, and then we're going to license it for more movies, and, you'll make all that kind of money, for every sequence of movies we make. It's it's going to be hundreds of millions of dollars, but we're going to race swap the characters. Like, oh yeah, hey, no problem. This isn't Shakespeare. This isn't Lord of the Rings. He doesn't give a shit. $20 million. So that's like wheelbarrows full of cash. Yeah, pretty much. You can take $100 bills and fill a room with it and swim around if you want. It's like, you can make the characters space aliens. I don't give two shits for $20 million. It's Disney money. You're gonna bend over for Disney money, and it's fine. I mean, because the book he wrote is pretty. I read him. It's just. I don't know if it's just, I was gonna say stupid. It's not stupid. It's just. It's nothing to write home about. It's a really basic story structure. It's okay to want to see European characters in stories. If representation matters, then it obviously works both. No. It doesn't work for you guys because you're not human. Yeah, I want to see more blue-eyed and green-eyed white characters in movies. Why wouldn't I want to see them? I think they're awesome. I want to see more of those stories told. If you don't get loud and start advocating for your stories to be told, then they will continue to F you in the A and give you this type of woke propaganda cancer. Or honestly, at some point, they're not going to turn this around. Hollywood is a done deal. They're not turning this around. At this point, you have to start writing your own stories. Join Comicsgate. Start writing books, graphic novels, screenplays, whatever. We can sidestep the mainstream with comics, graphic novels, and books because that has a low investment. To make a comic probably costs $10,000 for like a basic black and white comic, probably. 48-page thing, something like that. A big full-size color thing is probably like $30,000, to get it out, and so you probably need to cross over that threshold. So you can crowdfund that. That's not an insane amount of money to get a crowdfunding going. And books are obviously much less, but they're also less powerful. At least in Comicsgate, it seems to be graphic novel format is the bigger seller. So something like movies, we're not going to be able to make our own movies. That is a investment. Even a micro budget movie is, it's a lot. It's way more than making a comic, and the return on investment is great, actually. When you think about it, there's a lot of movies that are, at least lately, underperforming. So, but what we can do is start replacing the culture, at least in one small segment of Comicsgate. And like every minute you spend watching a YouTube video, an Odyssey video, these kind of things, is a minute you're not buying into Disney mainstream cultural Marxist propaganda. It's simply that easy. There's only 24 hours in a day. Every minute you're on Comicsgate or on YouTube, or with us in some capacity, is a minute you're not with Disney. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe, support channel on Coffee or Cash App, crypto, whatever, or join the Telegram. It's a good way to keep in touch, and I'll see you guys all next episode.